Part 1. The Forbidden Vase. The sky was bruised purple as evening crept across the city, and the last golden streaks of sunlight disappeared behind rows of old brick buildings. Emily Dawson stepped off the tram, her hands tucked deep into her coat pockets as she crossed the street toward a quiet alley she had never noticed before. It was a narrow, crooked lane lined with ivy-covered walls and cracked pavement, its end hidden in shadow, the kind of place you'd overlook unless you were searching for something. Emily wasn't sure what had drawn her down the alley that afternoon. She was on her way home from the city museum, where she worked as an assistant curator. The day had been long and uneventful, but something, a fleeting feeling or an invisible tug, had made her glance to the side, and then she saw it. A shop sign swinging lazily in the breeze. Whispers of time, antiques and curiosities. The display window was dusty and cluttered, filled with oddities from different eras, typewriters, dolls with glass eyes, clocks with no hands. Emily's eyes caught on something in the corner. A vase, porcelain, hand-painted. The lotus petals wrapped around its body were pale and slightly wilted, as if the artist had caught the flowers in the last moment before decay. Something about it made her skin prickle. She stepped inside. The door creaked open with a reluctant groan. The shop smelled of old wood, candle wax, and something faintly metallic. A bell tinkled overhead. "Hello," she called softly. From behind a shelf stepped an elderly man in a dark vest and wire-rimmed glasses. His eyes were clouded with age, but alert. "Evening," he said. "Looking for something special?" Emily gestured toward the window. "The vase in your display. Is it for sale?" The man tilted his head slightly. "That one?" She nodded. He paused. "It's not for everyone." Emily raised a brow. "Meaning?" "It's old. Very old," he said slowly. "And it carries a story. Not a pleasant one." Emily chuckled nervously. "I work at the city museum. I'm surrounded by unpleasant stories. That's kind of my thing." The old man didn't smile. "Stories are one thing. Curses are another." She hesitated, unsure if he was serious. "Are you saying it's cursed?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned, walked behind the counter, and pulled out a small wooden box. From it, he retrieved a folded sheet of parchment and placed it on the counter. Then, with trembling hands, he laid the vase next to it. Up close, it was even more exquisite. The porcelain shimmered slightly, like it had been glazed with moonlight. The lotus petals curled upward with aching beauty. Beneath the glaze, barely visible, were tiny hairline cracks like veins. "The woman who once owned this vase," the old man began, "died under terrible circumstances. Her soul was unrestful. It is said that a monk sealed her inside this object to contain her sorrow, or her rage. No one is certain." Emily leaned closer. "What happened to her?" "She was betrayed, murdered. Her lover left her on the eve of their wedding. Some say he buried her alive. Some say he used her as a ritual sacrifice. The truth is buried with her bones." Emily's skin chilled. "And the curse?" she asked. He pointed to the parchment. It was a page torn from an old book, faded and brittle. The ink had bled in places, but the illustration was clear. The same vase, painted with lotus flowers. In red ink, someone had scrawled, "Never place fresh flowers in the vase. It feeds her." Emily frowned. "Feeds her what?" The old man shook his head. "Don't find out." There was a long silence. Emily, despite the warnings, or perhaps because of them, felt the pull even more strongly. She had always been drawn to forgotten things, to broken stories waiting to be restored. "How much?" she asked. The man sighed like a tired parent. "Take it, if you must, but remember, do not place any fresh flowers inside, not even one." Back in her apartment, Emily placed the vase on the windowsill. It looked oddly perfect there, like it belonged, though she had never owned anything like it. Her apartment was modern, minimal, white walls, steel fixtures, cold light. The vase, with its softness and age, looked like a memory in the present. She sat on the couch, studying it from a distance. Then, almost without thinking, she stood and opened a drawer. Inside was a single white lotus she had purchased from a street vendor the day before. It had begun to wilt. She walked back to the vase, hesitated, then slipped the flower into its narrow neck. The petals fluttered slightly, as if adjusting to their new home. Emily stepped back. The apartment fell silent. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed to pause. Nothing happened. She exhaled, but that night she dreamed. She stood in a vast room she did not recognize. The walls were made of red lacquered wood, and the windows were shrouded in silk. A large mirror hung on the far wall, but it reflected nothing. In the center of the room was the vase, the same one. A woman stood beside it. She wore a red gown, soaked through at the hem, as if she had walked through water. Her hair was long, black, and tangled. Her face was pale and solemn, her lips slightly parted. Her eyes were hollow. Emily could not speak, could not move. The woman turned her head slowly and looked straight at her, and whispered, "Thank you." Emily woke up with a jolt. The next morning, the lotus in the vase was fresh. Not just fresh, it was in full bloom, as though it had just been picked. Emily stared at it for a long time, confused. She touched it. The petals were cool and firm, alive. She checked the calendar. It had only been one day. She shook her head. Maybe the flower wasn't as wilted as she thought. Maybe she'd imagined how close to death it was. She went to work, trying to shake the dream. But it clung to her. All day, she felt as though someone was watching her. Her reflection in the glass cases seemed slightly off. The air felt colder. That evening, when she returned home, she found water on the floor beneath the vase. A small puddle. She cleaned it up and checked the bottom. Dry, odd. She put it down to condensation. The dreams returned. Every night, the woman in red began to speak more. Her voice was distant, like it came from underwater. She told Emily about betrayal, about love turned to poison, about being locked in darkness, screaming unheard. One night, Emily woke up to the sound of someone crying in her hallway. She rose, heart racing, and walked through the dark apartment. No one was there, but the crying continued, faint, echoing. She turned on the lights. It stopped. The lotus was still blooming. A week later, her friend Rachel came over for wine and a movie. Emily didn't mention the vase, but as they talked on the couch, Rachel looked up and frowned. "Where'd you get that?" Emily followed her gaze. "Oh, the vase? Just something I picked up from an antique store." Rachel walked over and peered into it. "It's beautiful, but kind of creepy." Emily chuckled. "You think everything's creepy." Rachel touched the flower. "Still fresh? How long has it been?" "A week." Rachel blinked. "Seriously, that's not normal." Emily shrugged. "Maybe it's fake?" Rachel leaned in closer, narrowing her eyes. "It's not fake. I can smell it." They moved on, watched a horror movie, laughed, ate popcorn. But later that night, Rachel called Emily in tears. "I can't sleep," she whispered. "That woman, she was in my room. I swear to God, Emily, she was standing at the end of my bed." Emily froze. "What woman?" "The one in red, with the long hair. She was just watching me." Emily's blood went cold. The next morning, the puddle beneath the vase had returned, this time larger, and it wasn't water. It was pink, tinted, like blood diluted in water. Emily's hands shook as she cleaned it up. She opened her laptop and began to search. Porcelain lotus vase, cursed objects, sealed spirits. The internet offered little, myths, folk tales. But then on a forgotten forum about haunted artifacts, she found a thread titled, "The Red Bride in the Vase." The story was almost identical. A woman betrayed by her lover, buried in a porcelain coffin shaped like a vase. Her soul sealed to keep her rage from spilling out into the world. And the warning, repeated again and again, never place a living flower in the vase. It gives her life. Emily slammed the laptop shut, but it was too late. That night, she heard footsteps in her apartment. The bedroom door creaked open, though she had locked it. And the woman stood there, wet, red, silent, her eyes full of sorrow and hatred. She walked to the vase, touched the flower, then turned to Emily. "You brought me back," she whispered, "and now I will bloom." The lotus petals began to fall, one by one. Each petal landed like a drop of blood on the floor. Emily screamed. Darkness swallowed her. Part 2, The Curse Unfolds. Emily didn't remember falling asleep. All she remembered was the woman's face, wet, pale, and broken, and the way her voice echoed, "I will bloom." She woke on the floor of her bedroom, trembling, the morning light slicing through her blinds like knives. Her bed sheets were twisted around her legs, soaked with sweat. Her heart pounded like she had run miles, but the apartment was silent, too silent. She crawled to her feet, dizzy, her muscles aching like she'd been in a fight. And then she remembered the vase. She rushed to the windowsill. The lotus was gone. Only water remained in the vase, murky and pink like diluted blood. A petal floated on top, tinged deep crimson. Emily's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just some cursed object legend. Something was alive inside that vase, and she had let it out. For the next few hours, she tried to stay rational. She took photos of the vase and the water. She Googled everything again. There were dozens of folk stories from Southeast Asia about brides buried in porcelain urns, spirits trapped by betrayal, red-dressed women seeking revenge. Most were too vague, but one pattern returned over and over. The spirit feeds on attention and memory. The more people see her, the stronger she becomes. Emily remembered Rachel. She called her immediately. No answer. Her hands shook as she tried again and again. Finally, a man picked up. "This is Dr. Patel. Rachel's currently in our care." Emily's heart dropped. What happened? She had some kind of breakdown. She was found screaming in her apartment, unable to speak coherently. She kept pointing at the wall and muttering about the woman in red. Emily went cold. "She's stable for now," the doctor continued. "But we've had to sedate her. She hasn't said much else." Emily thanked him and hung up. "This is my fault." She stared at the vase. Its surface shimmered like oil on water. Beneath the glaze, the lotus pattern seemed different, more vivid. She squinted. There was now a face subtly painted in the vines, half concealed, a face with hollow eyes. She backed away. That evening, Emily brought the vase into the kitchen and locked it in a steel cabinet beneath the sink. Then she turned every light on in the apartment, put on loud music, and tried to pretend everything was fine. But at midnight, the music stopped. The lights flickered, and the cabinet door was open. The vase sat on the kitchen table. A fresh lotus bloomed in it, pure white, just like before. Emily screamed, grabbed the vase with both hands, and threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall. But when she turned on the light, it was whole again, sitting on the windowsill, undamaged, with the flower still in bloom. The next day, Emily visited the university archives, hoping someone could help. She met with Professor Naomi Lin, an expert in Southeast Asian mythology and spiritual traditions. Naomi was calm, logical, and skeptical, but she listened carefully to Emily's story. "You're telling me a cursed vase brought a ghost into your apartment?" Naomi asked, raising an eyebrow. Emily didn't even flinch. "Yes, and my friend is in a hospital because of it." Naomi leaned back, thinking. "I've heard similar tales," she admitted finally. "There's an old ritualistic practice, binding spirits into vessels. Some monks used porcelain, especially vases or urns for female spirits. A lotus bloom was often used to seal the curse, but if the lotus is ever reawakened, by placing a flower inside," Emily said. Naomi nodded. "Then the seal weakens. If the spirit is vengeful, she'll begin to haunt the person closest to her until she finds a soul to replace hers." Emily's face drained of color. "So she wants to possess me?" "Or worse," Naomi said softly, "she wants to live again." Emily begged Naomi to come see the vase. That night they stood together in the apartment, facing the thing. Naomi didn't speak for a long time. Finally she whispered, "That's not paint." "What?" Naomi pointed at the lotus design. "Those aren't brush strokes, they're veins." Emily leaned in, and she saw it too. The lotus designs on the vase had changed. The petals pulsed faintly, like skin over muscle. The face in the vines was now clearer, feminine, mournful, and angry. "She's evolving," Naomi muttered, "drawing energy from the flower, from you, and from anyone who enters." Emily swallowed. "So what do we do?" "We need to find the original burial site, or at least something tied to her death. If we can uncover the true story, we might be able to bind her again." "How do we find it?" Naomi looked at the vase grimly. "We let her show us." That night, they slept in shifts. At 3:17 a.m., Emily began to whisper in her sleep. Her voice was not her own. Naomi quickly recorded it. "He promised to wait. But he came with rope. He buried me beneath the old red tree. My blood watered the lotus. My voice fed the roots." When Emily woke up, she had no memory of speaking. Naomi pulled up historical records. Only one location in the city matched the clue. An old hilltop garden once known as the Red Blossom Grounds. Now abandoned, it had been a temple cemetery, built around a rare blood-red tree, the crimson banyan. The area was sealed off decades ago due to structural instability and spiritual rumors. Emily and Naomi decided to go that night. The grounds were overgrown and silent, bathed in pale moonlight. The tree still stood, its bark dark and reddish, its roots twisted like veins. As they approached, the air grew heavy. Emily felt dizzy, like something ancient was pressing against her chest. Then she saw it, a stone circle at the base of the tree, covered in moss, within it faint carvings of lotus petals. "This is it," Naomi whispered. Emily stepped forward and the wind howled. Suddenly the ground trembled. The soil in the center of the stone circle began to crack. Something beneath it was waking. A scream ripped through the air, not human. It echoed in their ears, their bones. Then a figure rose from the earth, the woman in red, her face twisted in agony, her mouth open but silent. Her dress dripped with blood and water. In her hands she held a broken mirror. Emily staggered back. Naomi shouted, "Don't look into it." But it was too late. Emily's eyes met her own reflection, and she saw herself, pale, dead-eyed, wearing the red dress. A cold hand gripped her heart. Naomi reacted quickly. She pulled out a talisman she had prepared, an ancient binding sigil inked with her own blood. She pressed it to the ground, chanting in an old dialect. The spirit shrieked and staggered back, clutching the mirror. The mirror cracked. "But not enough. We need to break the mirror," Naomi yelled. "That's the anchor, her soul." Emily ran forward. The ghost reached out, her mouth moving rapidly. "Take my place," she begged. "Wear the red. You understand the pain." Emily hesitated. The air was thick with grief, with sorrow that didn't belong to her but felt like hers. Then Naomi tackled her aside. "Don't listen." The mirror fell from the ghost's hands. Emily grabbed a rock and smashed it. The glass shattered into pieces. The spirit screamed and dissolved into smoke, spinning around the tree and vanishing into the roots. The earth groaned, then fell still. Silence returned, only the wind in the leaves. Back at Emily's apartment, the vase sat silently on the windowsill. The lotus had wilted. Emily approached it carefully. The patterns on the porcelain were fading. The veins were gone. The face in the vines had vanished. Naomi touched it. "She's gone, for now." Emily nodded. "But the vase?" Naomi asked. Emily took a deep breath. "We bury it, deep, where no one will ever find it." A week later, they traveled to a secluded temple in the mountains. A monk blessed the vase and sealed it in a small coffin carved from salt and iron. Together they buried it under sacred soil. As they walked away, Naomi asked, "Do you feel different?" Emily nodded. "Lighter, like I'm finally alone again." Naomi glanced at the horizon. "Some souls just don't want to be forgotten. That's the danger." Emily didn't answer. But that night in her dreams, she saw the woman again. Not angry, not mournful, just watching, silently. Part 3. The Final Bloom. 1 month had passed since the vase was buried beneath the mountain shrine. Emily Dawson was trying to rebuild her life. She had started therapy, picked up extra hours at the museum, and tried to surround herself with light, noise, and the living. The nightmares had faded. The red-dressed woman had disappeared from her dreams. But the silence wasn't peace. It was a warning. It began with a smell. Faint, sweet, floral. Emily woke one morning and found the scent of lotus blossoms hanging in the air. Not artificial, not from any perfume. It was the exact fragrance of the flowers she had once placed in the vase. She searched the apartment. Nothing. Her windows were shut. No one had left flowers. But on her desk, beneath a stack of receipts, she found something that made her blood run cold. A single white lotus petal, fresh. She stared at it for minutes, her breath shallow. She hadn't brought flowers home in weeks. She hadn't spoken of the vase. She hadn't even touched anything antique since the night they buried it. And yet the petal was real. She picked it up. The tips were tinged pink, as if soaked in something. Blood. That night, Emily met with Naomi Lynn at a quiet cafe downtown. "I found a petal," Emily whispered. "In my apartment." Naomi stiffened. "You're sure it was fresh?" Emily nodded. "Same smell? Same shape?" The color was wrong. It looked alive. Naomi pressed her lips into a thin line. "We sealed the vase properly. I watched the monk bless it. The burial ground was sacred." "Then how is she back?" Naomi hesitated. "We might have broken her connection to the object, but not her hunger. The spirit wasn't just trapped in the vase. She was anchored to the memory of betrayal, and you were the one who heard her story, who understood her pain." Emily froze. "She's tied to me," Naomi nodded. "She may have marked you." 2 days later, Emily's museum received an anonymous donation. An unmarked wooden crate arrived at the loading dock. No return address, no sender. Inside, a single artifact wrapped in crimson silk. Emily unwrapped it slowly. It was a mirror, shattered, but sealed beneath the broken shards, carefully arranged in a wooden frame. was a small porcelain shard. She knew instantly what it was, a piece of the vase. Her hands trembled. She turned it over. Scratched into the back were 3 words. "One bloom remains." Emily brought the fragment to Naomi. Naomi paled. "This shouldn't exist. We buried everything. Then someone dug it up." Naomi shook her head. "No, I don't think anyone touched the coffin. This piece, it wasn't part of the original vase. It's new." Emily blinked. "She's recreating it," Naomi whispered. "She doesn't need the object anymore. You gave her enough life. Now she's growing." Emily collapsed onto a chair, clutching her head. "So what happens when the last bloom opens?" Naomi looked her in the eyes. "She replaces you." Emily tried to run. She took a leave from work, deleted her social media, and moved into a rental cottage 2 hours outside the city. She brought nothing with her. No artifacts, no clothes from the apartment, nothing touched by the curse. The cottage was quiet, tucked into the woods near a river. It felt safe. For 2 nights, she slept soundly. Then on the 3rd, she woke at midnight. The window was open, cold air spilled in, and on the table beside her bed sat a vase, not the same one, but identical in design. Painted in fresh white glaze, its lotus petals bright and unwilted. Inside it, a 6th bloom. Only one remained. Emily screamed and hurled the vase against the wall. It shattered. But in the morning when the sun rose, she found it again. On the table, whole. The flower was still there, and this time something had changed. She could hear breathing, not her own. It came from inside the vase, a slow, steady inhale, exhale, like someone sleeping just beneath the porcelain. She called Naomi. "I don't think I can fight this." Naomi's voice was calm. "You don't have to fight her." Emily blinked. "What do you mean?" "You have to confront her. Let her finish her story. That's the only way it ends." Emily was silent. Naomi continued. "Tomorrow is the blood moon, the same phase from the night she died. That's when her spirit will be strongest. But it's also the only time you can seal her completely. One final ritual, one final chance." Emily nodded slowly. "What do I need to do?" Naomi's voice dropped to a whisper. "You'll need to offer her the choice she never had." The ritual required 3 things: a mirror reflecting only the living, a lotus that had never touched water, and the blood of the marked. Emily prepared everything. She stood at the river shrine where she and Naomi had first buried the vase. A sacred circle of ash was drawn around her. The mirror lay flat on a stone altar. The lotus sat beside it, perfect, untouched. She sliced her palm and let a single drop of blood fall onto the flower. Then she waited. The moon rose, and the air shifted. She felt the temperature drop. The woods fell silent. From the shadows came the sound of footsteps, wet and slow. The woman appeared. Not a ghost anymore. A form, a body. Her red dress clung to her like blood-soaked skin. Her face was no longer twisted with rage, but calm, almost serene. Her eyes met Emily's. "You brought me here," she said. Emily's voice was steady. "You needed to be heard." The woman looked down at the lotus, then the mirror. "You know what I am." "Yes," Emily said. "You were betrayed, used, buried alive. You want a body again. You want to live." The woman stepped forward. The final bloom unfurled behind her, thin, invisible to the world, but radiant in the spirit realm. "One more step," she said, "and I will take your place." Emily didn't move. "You can have a new body," Emily said, "but you have to choose, not steal. You've hurt people. That ends tonight." The woman studied her, then looked at the mirror. Her reflection showed nothing. She turned to Emily. "What will you offer me?" Emily reached into her pocket and removed the porcelain shard from the shattered donation. She held it out. "Your voice, your story. It will be remembered. It won't fade again. But you must leave the living." The woman took the shard in her hand and wept. For the first time, the air around them shimmered with warmth. She walked to the altar, touched the mirror, and pressed the shard to its surface. It disappeared into the glass. The mirror glowed, and then she was gone. Emily collapsed to her knees, sobbing. The vase vanished from the earth. The lotus withered instantly. And for the first time in months, there was peace. Epilogue 6 weeks later. Emily returned to work. She now led lectures on spirit-binding rituals and cultural folklore. Her office was filled with bright flowers, natural light, and living things, but she kept one thing on her shelf: a small glass case. Inside it, resting on black velvet, was the porcelain shard. It no longer pulsed, but if you leaned close in the silence, you could hear breathing.